Hey guys, it's Kay from KS Anonymous, and I am back today with another episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. You want a horn? You get a horn. When I was 16, I took my driver's license test in a 1976 GMC van. It's a big van. Luckily, the test didn't require parallel parking. My dad takes me to the DMV, and I meet the guy who will take me out for my test. This guy is arrogant and kind of snotty from the first. The first step was for him to check out the vehicle and make sure the blinkers and lights work, etc. The last thing he checked was the horn, which, unknown to us, had to be working. But the horn had been on the fritz lately, and it didn't work when I pressed it. The guy refused to take me on my test. I know he was only doing his job, but he was rude about it and quite annoyed that I was wasting his time. So I went back to my dad, who was obviously surprised that I was back so soon, and I explained the situation. My father, with a gleam in his eyes, said, "He wants a horn? He'll get a horn." My dad went out and bought and installed a horn for an 18-wheeler. As you know, those suckers are really loud. And I returned to the DMV a few days later for another chance at a test. So the tester goes through the same process. Blinkers, check. Lights, check, etc. until he came to the last item, which was the horn. For this, he was standing about 3 feet in front of the van. I lay on the horn perhaps a second or two longer than necessary, and the guy literally jumped backwards at least 3 feet. Of course, my dad and I had a good laugh, the guy was taken down a notch, and I passed my test. I will never forget my dad's malicious compliance, and I continue to tell this story as an example of my late dad's awesome personality and of his love for me. And I will never, ever forget the look of that guy's face as he jumped backwards after the scare of his life. Can you imagine? Like the 18-wheeler's semi-truck kind of horn sound coming from a van? Like, what the crap? I will take you and your company to the cleaners. Hi all. First time posting, so be kind. So a bit of a backstory. I work for one of the UK's large internet, home, phone, and TV providers. I deal with tech support, sales, general customer relations, and so on. Now, my company only supplying home phone services opposed to business phone lines is important to the story, as you'll soon find out. So a customer calls in to express his rage that we've been overcharging his phone bill for months. I used to pay £10 per month, but now I'm paying £70. Checking his account, he downgraded from paying a set £10 to make a limited amount of calls to a pay per minute plan, and due to making 90-ish calls to the same number per month, he had been charged for the usage per minute, which racks up huge costs. Of course he's furious. States he doesn't use his house phone to make calls, so shouldn't be incurring charges. He only has his house phone to divert calls to his business, as his house number was being used as a business line. We should have told him this would happen. A typical line from customers in my industry. He wants a refund for the £210 in charges he's incurred due to his own error. For those who don't know much about phone calls, etc., when you divert a call from line A to B, it is actually line A, customer's home phone, calling line B, customer's business phone, in order to transfer the line to them, and therefore counts as making a call, therefore still charged per minute. I inform him that diverting the call is the same as his home phone calling his business, and this is why there's charges. I also inform him we provide domestic and not business lines, and that using the line for business is a breach of his contract with us, so I can't refund him for the charges. Long pause on his end, and then I practically hear the foam coming from his mouth as he starts screaming at me that, "As a customer of 6 years, I'll take you and your company to the cleaners if you even think of canceling my contract, and I don't get my charges back. I will sue for loss of earnings and the stress you will cause me, the loss of my effing customers, and blah 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 blah." Being an experienced agent, I'll usually warn customers 3 times about abuse, and then we'll disconnect the call. However, through the whole experience, something isn't sitting right with me about the info he's giving and how this bill is so dang high from diverted calls, all to the same business number. So, I ask about the volume of calls that are coming through and what business he's running. By this time, he's so furious and acting like an invincible big man, and so sure he has grounds to sue if we disconnect for a breach of contract terms, that he reveals he's running a call center with 36 agents using our phone line service. Basically, his customers would call his house phone number he was paying us for. It would divert to his call center, where his customer service agents would then answer the diverted calls and arrange boiler repairs and installation, etc. This, of course, is a huge breach of contract and a massive cost to the company I work for. Usually at the point a customer telling us I use my house number to run a business, it's not huge. It's more along the lines of a designer, DJ, hairdresser, freelance IT who gives clients their home number because they don't have an office, etc. This guy, however, takes a first prize for his audacity of running a call center from our services. So I tell him that I'll speak to another department and call him back, yes, Mr. Customer, I'll see what I can do, Mr. Loyal Customer. So I speak to our compliance and fraud teams to investigate the breach of contract. The fallout. They issue him with a 31 cancellation letter, informing him that 1, he has 31 days to find a new provider before we cut him off for breach of contract. 2, because his line rental was still within a minimum term contract, he has to pay early termination charges. $18.99 per month for the 15 months left of his contract equals £284.85 additional charges to him. And 3, he will not be receiving the disputed charges because he's broken his contractual agreement with us. Funny thing is, if he was nicer, I'd have let it slide. I have never emailed compliance on a customer except this guy. Good riddance. Oh my god. Imagine having the audacity to call and be like, I need the fee waived for my highly illegal usage. Imagine that, as well as having downgraded from a plan that was making it, only a little bit more per month or something. This dude has all the dumb. Want me to work faster? Got a boss. I was working for an undisclosed large shipping company at an undisclosed airport for about 2 years. Loved the job, not really hard work, mostly teamwork and communication. First year during winter, I get an invitation to join the de-icing department. The winters around here are awful, and planes cannot leave without de-ice during snow or icing conditions. I absolutely loved it, so much that I did it the next year. This year, however, differed. Once de-ice starts, we usually only do de-ice things until spring. We never have touched another job during the winter season. De-ice is very important and difficult to train. They don't want people gone because of injuries from doing other work. Cue our new upper management. New guy comes in on his first day and says that we are going to be taking turns on the mat. Large place inside the gigantic warehouse where the cargo containers inside planes are taken to be unloaded. These containers usually number in the 3,000 to 4,000 pound range. The entire de-ice crew has a fit, and we start paperwork with our union rep. Unfortunately, she can't do anything about it on day 1, so I get stuck on the first crew on the mat. Now it's dead middle of winter and easily negative 20 Fahrenheit outside, and I am dressed for the weather, so once inside, I start removing layers. Hey, what are you doing? I hear from my boss, who is watching me try my best to get my coat off. I'm removing layers. I want to stay cool. Just start working. Don't work too hard. He responds. I'll give him credit. He was a decent guy. Wanted the work done. I shrug and start working, unloading a bunch of boxes alone in the container, working slow and steady. You, in lane 41. You need to work faster. You're behind. It's the manager for the mat yelling at me from above. I'll overheat, and I don't want to sweat. I've got de-ice after this, was my response. He took much offense to this, as not wanting to have sweat freeze to you in the wind is apparently bad. If you don't empty the can in the time limit, I'll write you up. His smug response has malicious compliance written all over it. I nod and go back to work at a breakneck pace. I was ticked, and more importantly, I was in a hot container, in a hot warehouse, in hot clothes, and mostly dehydrated. I worked until I stopped sweating, the first sign of dehydration and potential heat stroke. By this point, I was 3/4 done with the container, and about 15 minutes had passed. I need a break. Can I go get a drink? I yelled at the manager on the catwalk. You have 5 minutes to finish that can. No breaks. He responded without even looking at me. At this point, I should have reported this violation to my union rep. No breaks equals angry union rep. I decide that the military instilled me with enough discipline to continue. So continue I did. 3 minutes later, I was on the ground suffering from acute D had syndrome, 1 ambulance ride, 1 talk with a union rep, and a meeting with the regional manager from the company, i.e. the man in charge of the entire system in that particular area. That particular manager is no longer working for the company, and D-Ice doesn't have to work odd jobs again. That, my friend, is called being a literal hero. Don't do that, though. Don't do that. Like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't, like, sacrifice your health and possibly, your life, because someone's dumb and doesn't understand what they're doing is causing you harm. But yes, you, as many in the comments said, literally, quite literally, took one for the team in the biggest way. I can't pass you with that broken mirror. When I was growing up, Dad had a friend that had an old delivery van he bought from a carpet company. You know the kind, late 70s, early 80s, no back seats, worked sporadically, and had lots of room for stuff. He was very generous about lending it out to folks he knew that were moving. The van used to have windows in the back, but over time these had been removed/covered up at some point. This meant that it had a rear view mirror inside the cab, and at some point one year it got cracked. But who cares, because you can't see out the back anyway, right? So the time came to take the van through emissions and safety inspection, and he gets to the point where they are checking the blinkers and such, and the guy sees the mirror in the cab. "I'm sorry, sir, I'm going to have to fail your inspection. Your rear view mirror is cracked." But you can't even use it. The back windows are not there anymore. So, if that mirror wasn't there, I would pass? Yes. The friend reaches up, rips the mirror off the mount, and tosses it in the back of the van. Okay, problem solved. The inspector was a little flummoxed for a second, but then shrugged and passed him. And this is my 2 weeks notice. This story occurred about a year ago, but requires some background. This might be a little long. I worked at a local golf course for about 7 years, from when I was 13 to 20. When I had started there, my mother was the manager of all things food and beverage until that summer, because she took on a different job. Working there for so long put me in line to be the new manager. However, I was not willing to take the position because I was enrolled in college and wouldn't have the time for it. And considering my mother worked 100-hour-plus weeks sometime in our busy season, I wasn't willing. So they brought in Addie to replace my mother as food and beverage manager, and I was another regular employee. The golf course also has a general manager who we will call Chad. Chad sucks. He was creepy toward all the girls that worked there and had a terrible temper. One similar to a toddler. We never saw eye to eye on anything, especially his management style, and was always getting on my case, even though I was the only person on the food and beverage side of things that knew what was up and how to do anything, including Addie. So this brings us to the story. I was working in our little restaurant serving our golf leagues that come in. One league in particular liked to stay really late, like 12 a.m. to 1 a.m., but I never really minded as I got along well with them and I became good friends with a lot of the members. And they were always buying beer/shots, so there was never much of an issue with it. When Addie started there, Chad decided to change up our dining room policies to close the restaurant at 10:30 p.m. This personally really aggravated me. They were paying customers, and I was happy to serve them, and I was the only one that was usually serving them. But Chad kept going on about labor costs, which if anyone reading this knows anything about serving, I wasn't making much hourly and was relying on tips to make money. So they put this into place, and I tell Chad it's his responsibility to tell the league that they have to leave at 10:30 and not me. He didn't. And guess what? The league members were ticked. First mistake. Addie would not often, or honestly never, stay to help with the leagues, but was adamant about the new hours. As she is about to head out for the day, she tells me that I will be training 2 girls in the restaurant that night. We have about 80 extremely needy golfers in the restaurant at once on this night in particular. I barely had time to train one, but she did not stay to help out with that. Looking back on it, it was definitely not my responsibility to train anyone either. But I was willing to help out as she was still getting adjusted to the job and she knew that and took advantage of that. Second mistake. Then mentions to me that if I am not clocked out by 10:50 p.m., then I will not be paid for any work after the fact. Third mistake. I ended up training one of the girls on our POS computer and told her she was done for the day and that she can clock out. and continued to train the other girl for the rest of the evening. So when the leagues left at 10:30, there was food on the floor, bathrooms weren't cleaned, trash was not taken out, the tables were moved from their normal resting place, and the drawer wasn't counted. I told the girl I was training to move the tables, and I counted the drawer. Well, it's 10:50 now, and I'm not working for free. So we clocked out and left. Could I have done more? Absolutely, but I needed to prove a point. The next morning, I had many missed calls from Chad and Addie. I didn't have to come in for 2 days, so I just let them keep calling. So on the next shift day I finally called Chad back. He told me to come in for a meeting with him and Addie. When I get there, he gives me a story about how he had to come in and clean everything up with Addie, and why would I ever do something like that? I told him that Addie not only had me training 2 people on our busiest night of the week alone, but I also had to be out at 10:50 or I was told I wasn't being paid. After going back and forth about how Addie was just kidding and I shouldn't take things so seriously, I had finally had enough of Chad and his antics. I told them I was putting in my 2 weeks, and the looks on their faces were as if I had shot someone right in front of them. It was awesome. I continued to work for the next 2 weeks, doing everything I was supposed to and training Addie on any little detail I could think of before I left. After my 2 weeks was up, I ended up getting calls from Addie and Chad all the time because nothing was going right. I was asked again by Chad to take Addie's position on, and Addie was calling me, telling me how impossible Chad is to work with. It was truly beautiful to watch all the chaos unfold even after I left. Addie ended up quitting a month after because her and Chad couldn't get along. I don't miss much about that job or place, but I do miss my regulars every day. If any of y'all are reading this, I hope you're doing well. So I'm glad you had your moment. As someone who also used to serve, you get paid like $2.13 an hour, or at least I did, and that's pretty similar to what other servers get paid. So yeah, you're just working for tips. $2.13 an hour, like forget it. Like, the complaint about labor costs was total BS. We had that problem too at the restaurant that I worked for. They would complain about labor costs in regard to servers, and it's like, you're paying me dirt. Like, you can go complain about someone else's being paid right now. Like, are you kidding me? And another thing, trying to train someone while you're busy is insane already, let alone 2 people. It was just a whole mess. But that's kind of how restaurants tend to be, I've noticed. Is like, usually someone's a mess. Someone's got drama with somebody. Anyway, that is going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and drop a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Really quickly, I would like to thank my patrons. Up on the screen, you should see my face palmers and my crazy case. Thank you all so much for supporting me in that way. If you are interested in becoming a patron, checking out the original posts from today's video, or sending me an email for possible inclusion in a future video, all of that information is in the description box, so be sure to check it out. And I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!